So occasionally I'll get home and I'll kind of hang out, and Evan's like editing Newswave and all of this, and I'll play some games and I'll kind of read some stuff online, and sometimes I'll sit here and I'll get kind of, I guess, nostalgic at times, especially when I hear about an anniversary coming up for a game, and it kind of puts into perspective how old we're getting and really just how much things have changed maybe since 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And one thing in particular was brought up here, and it really made me kind of think about just how different things are when it comes to games, their build up and their eventual release. And I want to talk about that here today and how that ties into Metal Gear Solid 2, which is going to turn 20 this November. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So I know I'll talk about different news stories and stuff on here at times, but this is a bit different because it was brought to my attention that Metal Gear Solid 2 is an old game, older than even I was thinking. 20 years, you think about that and you put it in perspective and you're like, wow, that's a long time. And this was back in November of 2001. And I think we get reminded of this mostly with systems. Like, we'll hear about how old the Nintendo 64 is, or the GameCube, right? Or the PS2. And you're like, I remember playing that when I was like a teenager. And now it's like, wow, that was 20 years ago. But the buildup for Metal Gear Solid 2 was something else. And I feel like it's something we don't really get as much now, probably because we're so connected. And it does make me think about this abandoned situation as well, and a little bit about Death Stranding, mostly because it's Kojima being tied into all these things, whether it's through speculation or actually releasing the game. But back in the day with Metal Gear Solid 2, there was a lot of controversy when the game came out, mostly because of the way it was advertised. If you have not played Metal Gear Solid 2 yet, you need to. I think it's a very good game, and it is kind of that moment in history for gaming that we may never see again. And I think a lot of that has to do with what that game actually was when it released. See, building up to the release of the game, they had advertised it quite heavily as Snake being the main character, like all the way through. A lot of the footage that they showed had to do with Snake on that tanker level that you spend like the first, hour and a half or 2 hours. And then it shifts over to Raiden, which was certainly a bit of out of left field at that time. It was something we were not expecting at all. And I remember when I was first playing it, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we're jumping over to this Raiden character for like an hour or so. Maybe that's what's happening. And then we're going to jump right back over to Snake. But no, we just played as Raiden the rest of the way. The game was like 80 to 90% of you playing as Raiden and not at all Snake. And the game itself was just disguised so well leading up to the release of it that we were just going to be playing as Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And I mean, the game looked awesome in all of the advertising and the trailers they did. I went back and I watched one of the trailers here yesterday when I heard about how old this game is about to be, basically 20, and I was like, wow, that game, I remember seeing this and I was just blown away by it. I think it was E3 2000 that they were showing it off, and the idea was them showing how the guards would interact. They showed first person in Metal Gear Solid, which was like mind-blowing at the time because we came from the PS1 Metal Gear Solid and you weren't looking around the world like that. Completely different perspective. I remember they were showing at one point how every individual bottle on the back of a bar you could shoot and it would explode and glass shards would go everywhere, and all this was running at a high frame rate the entire time. The AI for the guards, there was a lot of emphasis on that. And the story itself was very engaging, and they did that fourth wall breaking at the right time to actually make you sit back and kind of question how much of a video game this was and how much it was blending into real life. But now, 2 decades later, it's pretty difficult to do what was done here with Metal Gear Solid back in 2000 and 2001 because we're so connected and there are so many like leaks and rumors and stuff going around that we kind of expect the unexpected essentially now all the time, right? Like Abandoned. If that ends up being something like a Metal Gear Solid or like a Silent Hill, we were all kind of expecting it anyway. We were all thinking that was a possibility, whereas back then with Metal Gear Solid 2, we did not think Raiden was a possibility as the main character from Metal Gear Solid 2. And I feel like a lot of people want Abandon to be something completely different so they could get that fake out or that feeling like we had here with Metal Gear Solid 2. And I feel like we wanted that with Death Stranding as well. And maybe that's because it was Kojima, and a lot of people feel like Kojima is always going to take that left turn whenever I was expecting him to take a right turn and just completely surprise everyone, because Death Stranding was being talked about as this like walking simulator or a game where you just deliver packages, and everyone's like, no, there's going to be something else that happens here. That's not what the game is. But then it came out, and that's what the game was, and it seemed to turn a lot of people off, maybe because it was a letdown and it wasn't this massive shift into being a Metal Gear game or something more action-oriented or just completely different. But Death Stranding on its own was so unique that I feel like now more and more people have been coming around to what it actually is. And then I'm sure some of it is also just the nostalgic feeling of going on GameWinners.com or Game FAQs, or I don't know, was IGN still N64.com back then in 2000, 2001? At this point, some of that just becomes kind of a blur as we eventually worked up to watching G4 and waiting for Cinematech to come on so we get a glimpse at some of these next-gen visuals if you didn't have that system like the Xbox or the GameCube or the PS2. But I feel like a lot of us just kind of want that feeling of surprise again with marketing that essentially deceives us and gives us some crazy game we weren't expecting, or something like Abandon to turn out to be something different. It's just Metal Gear Solid 2's anniversary came up, caught me by surprise. 20 years since the biggest fake out in gaming, and I feel like a lot of us are still kind of looking for that feeling once again, especially if you were around and playing games and aware at the time with the run-up in 2000 and 2001. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. I was just kind of just rambling some thoughts there about this whole thing and how I just got hit with a wave of nostalgia for Metal Gear Solid 2 after finding out it's about to be 2 decades old. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.